This is SBS World News with Janice Peterson.
Good evening. We're only hours away from the biggest show on earth, the FIFA World Cup. It's a tournament cloaked in controversy, however, from the actual awarding of the competition to Russia 8 years ago, to Russia's war with Ukraine and the poisoning of a former Russian spy in Britain. Despite the arguments, the World Cup finals begin tonight with the opening ceremony in Moscow. And Darren Mara is there for SBS World News. He joins me now live. Darren, the festival begins shortly, but anger and controversy are never far from the surface.
Janice, good evening. Yes, it is a tense political situation here. The Australian government warns of the possibility of anti-Western sentiment or harassment, and there have been some high-profile boycotts. No British ministers or members of the royal family will be here because of that poisoning you mentioned. Now, these concerns are still bubbling away, never far from the surface, but tonight Russia is hoping it can put on a show for the world.
Go Socceroos!
With just hours until kick-off, celebrations in the Russian capital have reached fever pitch. Fans draped in flags and national team jerseys in force on the streets of Moscow.
First time here, I love the city, love the people.
Moscow's been good. Had a great time so far. People have been really friendly.
Team anthems sung in multiple languages ring out across the city. But the enthusiasm is not being felt in neighbouring Ukraine, which has been at war with Russia since it annexed Crimea 4 years ago. In Kiev, there are fresh calls to boycott the event. Similar pleas have been echoed elsewhere, with the host country subject to growing international isolation. It's intensified in recent months after the attempted poisoning of an ex-Russian spy and his daughter in the UK, which led to the expulsion of Russian diplomats by a string of Western countries. But it hasn't deterred the fans, with millions expected throughout the 4-week tournament. With swelling crowds comes a growing security presence, Russia taking no chances, with police and military units deployed across the country, including the Army, Navy, Air Force and even paramilitary groups. Last night, perhaps the calm before the storm, with an open-air concert in Red Square attended by President Vladimir Putin, FIFA President Gianni Infantino and other top officials. Crowds tonight likely to be far rowdier. Hundreds of millions of fans around the world will tune in when the single biggest global sporting event gets underway here in Moscow. Now, the first match has the habit of setting the tempo for the rest of the tournament ever since the hosts began playing the opening game back in 2006. And just 30 minutes before Russia takes on Saudi Arabia, the opening ceremony with British pop star Robbie Williams the headline act.
This has been a staple of my life ever since I can remember. It's been the pinnacle of entertainment, you know, for the world.
The ceremony is expected to honour all things Russian, almost. And we'll return to Ben in Kazan shortly, but earlier I spoke to SBS football analyst Craig Foster about what we can expect from the match. Fozzie, in just a couple of hours' time, the Socceroos take on France, their opening game of the World Cup. What an amazing and great challenge ahead for Australia.
Yeah, it's great. Australia's World Cup party gets underway tonight. For us, though, it's just another step in the long journey to one day winning the World Cup.
Now, it's not all celebrations and sport in Moscow right now. A prominent British gay rights activist says he fears he may be prevented from leaving Russia after he was detained this week for conducting a one-man protest in Moscow. Now, Peter Tatchell was seeking to draw attention to what he says are appalling human rights abuses committed against gay men in Chechnya. Sanctions. Arrest and detainment are nothing new for gay rights activist Peter Tatchell.
During the World Cup, it's forbidden to hold any action like this.
But he says he feared for his life when he was arrested for protesting in Red Square this week.
I count myself lucky because if I'd been a Russian citizen and done that, I would have been treated quite roughly by the police.
Mr. Tachel accused President Vladimir Putin of failing to speak out on the persecution of LGBTIQ+ people in Chechnya.
I thought it was really important that President Putin should not have an unchallenged PR coup with the World Cup.
He's been called to appear in court on June 26 to answer charges of holding an illegal protest. But Mr. Tachel says he plans to leave Russia before the court date.
I am fearful that I might be stopped, but it's a risk I'll have to take.
While same-sex relationships are not illegal in Russia, members of the community have long faced persecution. In 2013, Russia passed an anti-gay law sanctioning fines for what it calls propaganda of non-traditional sexual relationships among minors. Last week, Russian Cossacks said they would report any gay couples seen kissing in public. But with the world's eyes on Russia for the World Cup, safety fears for gay fans have not gone unnoticed.
Russia's trying to present a welcoming face to the world. And we hope that all those things will help just to slightly move public opinion here in Russia to be more open, more accepting, and more tolerant.
Good evening. At least 7 people, including World Cup fans, have been injured after a taxi ploughed into pedestrians on a crowded sidewalk near Red Square in central Moscow. Darren Mara joins us now from Moscow. Darren, what's the latest on this situation?
Good evening, Leolyn. Well, Russian authorities have detained the driver who claims to have lost control of his vehicle just several hundred metres from Red Square, not far from where we are here. Now, there's no suggestion from the authorities that it was terror-related, but it has raised security fears just a day after the US warned its citizens not to travel to Russia for the World Cup. A sudden moment of horror as a taxi veers onto a crowded footpath. With no chance to flee, pedestrians are suddenly and violently struck down. Moments later, the 28-year-old driver attempts to flee. He later told police he fell asleep at the wheel with his foot on the accelerator.
He was in a traffic jam with the cars going really slowly. How could he lose control of the wheel, push the gas and drive into the crowds?
At least 7 people, including 2 Mexican World Cup fans, were injured. Russian authorities say the driver, identified by his Kyrgyz driver's license, will face criminal charges for what they believe to be an accident. The incident has inflated security concerns for more than 1 million fans expected to descend on Russia for the World Cup. Official estimates claim more than $600 million has been spent solely on security across the tournament's 11 host cities.
Yeah, at times we feel like there was a bit too much police presence, but it's been okay.
But the US State Department says it may not be enough, warning its citizens against travelling to Russia. In a statement, it said terrorists may seek to attack event locations such as stadiums and fan-fest viewing areas, tourist sites, transportation hubs and other public venues. As recently as 2017, authorities reportedly disrupted an alleged plan by IS to attack public transport and other sites in Moscow. And there's been an ongoing focus on nullifying hooliganism. Alexander Vahovsky investigates racism, nationalism and hate crimes in Russia.
When it is important, our authorities make a lot of, let's say, informal communications with leaders of football hooligans to convince them somehow to avoid organized violence.
However, Mr. Vahovsky says trying to prevent all incidents of hooliganism and discrimination during the World Cup is impossible.
Racism is generally very widespread in our society, so it may come from anywhere.
European Anti-Discrimination Network FAIR is running a temporary diversity centre in Moscow to support fans worried about hooliganism or racism.
Most of those hooligans are connected to far-right groups. And so, you will not just have violence, you would have far-right influence violence with, the paraphernalia of the far right, with fascist symbols.
I'm in central Moscow, and as you can see, it's absolutely heaving. Now, police from all 32 countries playing in this year's World Cup have flown into Russia to help spot troublemakers and also prevent fans like these from having run-ins with the local authorities.
Russian police are hoping to prevent a repeat of the brawls between Russian and English fans at the 2016 European Championship in France. They've pledged to curb violence by deploying thousands of officers to host cities.
Whatever will happen, I will accept, because this crowded, who can control it? Yeah. We appreciate the police. Police really, they have a hard job.
It's beautiful and very safe.
But terrifying scenes like these in Moscow's main tourist district show increased security is no guarantee of visitor safety.
Good evening. The 2018 World Cup campaign has come to an end in spectacular fashion. France's 4-2 victory over Croatia made it the highest scoring final in more than 50 years. SBS reporter Darren Mara joins us from Moscow. And Darren, a sea of red, white and blue has swept through the city.
Yes, that's right, Sarah. Good evening to you. France is still celebrating after securing its second World Cup crown, 20 years after claiming its breakthrough title on home soil. For coach Didier Deschamps, it was a personal crowning achievement. He's only the third man in history to win the World Cup as both a player and a coach.
French players drowning in glory, soaking up the atmosphere. The team's prayers answered as the heavens opened. But who cares about the weather when you've just won the World Cup?
Cadeau, la vie est belle, on est champion, tout va bien.
The Russian president appearing to be the only person who managed to stay dry, even cracking a slight smile as he shook hands with the winning team. The French president, on the other hand, embracing the rain, the players, and his emotions. This photo, which quickly went viral, perfectly captures his excitement during the match, as did this post-game video of him in the thick of the locker room celebrations, attempting to pull off a dab, the signature dance move of star midfielder Paul Pogba. What's been an extraordinary month of football was given the finale it deserved. France's 4-2 victory made it the highest scoring final since 1966.
C'était très tendu tout le match. Mais c'était un beau match quand même, on a vibré.
The team led 2-1 at half-time. Their second goal, a penalty, came by virtue of a controversial video-assisted decision. And the controversy continued into the second half as 4 women, members of Russian anti-Kremlin group Pussy Riot, charged the field. They were swiftly escorted away and later detained by police. A short time later, France looked to have wrapped it up with 2 goals within 6 minutes. But Croatia clawed back, scoring a second goal and reigniting hope for the nation, who fought until the very end. The team coming so close to their first ever World Cup victory.
We will keep dreaming. We are dreaming for 20 years. We will dream for 120 more if we need to.
France's second win in 20 years, a dream come true, especially for the younger fans.
I wasn't born during the first World Cup when we have the first, and now that's incredible.
It was a victory they've been working towards since their loss to Italy in the 2006 World Cup and their European Championship defeat 2 years ago.
And so the ghosts of 2006 and 2016 have been exorcised. France didn't start this tournament in championship form, but they finished it as champions. And so they gladly wear a second championship star above their heart.
A sweet victory for coach Didier Deschamps, who was captain of the winning squad in 1998. He now becomes only the third man in World Cup history to win as both player and coach.